Hey, Kelly, thanks for taking some time to sit with me and talk about emergency plans and contingency plans. As everyone knows, this year has been a year that a ton of businesses have had to really look at their contingency plans, and if they didn't have any, to create them and implement them and really practice with their staff. And here, our whole business revolves around emergencies and disasters, so it would be super easy for us at Maxons to not have one of these plans. With that being said, I wanted to check in with you and see how we're handling our contingency plans now, how they were handled in the past, and if there's been any big changes for this year.
Sure. I think this is a really great topic for right now because I think some companies had to make some really quick choices and maybe weren't prepared. We are lucky in that we naturally adapt very quickly to emergencies going on around us, but we have had a plan since, I'll say, about 2005. We built it out in advance in the event that we couldn't get to any of our physical locations, that if phones went down, what was our plan? If certain offices were affected, what were our plans? So we actually built out a plan many, many years ago. I'd say before VoIP phones were the norm, before not having servers on site were the norm, and we've been able to adapt and adjust it as our tech has changed, as our staff has changed, as our locations have adjusted. So we're lucky that we had a solid template that we've just been able to continually adapt over the last 15 years.
So how often do we review this as a team, as a company?
As a company, like, we probably look at the plans themselves at least once a year and just make sure, you know, names are the same, places are the same. Each location actually has, like, where do we meet in the event of an evacuation? So we just check in and make sure those are all consistent. I'd say anytime we do an IT change, for instance, we changed providers a few years ago, which changed our server setup. So once we did something like that, we had to update it. If any of our building management has changed, which has happened, we've had a building go up for sale and had managers change on it. So all of that we kind of update as it happens. And I'll say we actually annually, we host what we call a CAT day, which is for us a practice day for a catastrophe or a widespread emergency. So we've done variations of these over the years, but they generally poke at a few things within the contingency plan itself and make sure other people besides one or two of us know how to pull some triggers when it comes to changes in IT, if a location changes, what we may need to do, if the phones and the internet are down, how do we still operate, those kinds of things. So the beginning, I'll say even the beginning of COVID, we did like a worst case scenario plan where it was like, okay, if no mail can get out, if the internet goes down, if the phones go down, if nobody can get to any locations, if we're all stuck at home for 2 months, how do we still operate as a business, because our business takes place in the field. So every year there's a new unique situation that we get to adapt to. This year certainly pushed at a lot of the kind of limits we already had in place for ourselves and made us think outside what we had down on paper.
Yeah, I guess COVID kind of gave us that, like, here's a very real world scenario, figure it out just in case. Did you find anything that needed to be updated since the COVID pandemic happened? Anything that needed to be changed?
Yeah, we actually had never sort of explored looking at transferring our phones to ring direct to people's homes or cell phones. We've always been able to manage to get somebody in at least one location where we figure we can handle phone calls out of one site. This time we had to think about that scenario. So we had to do some like work on the back end in our phone system to be able to pull a trigger that was like, okay, now no offices are open. We still need daytime phone ability, and how do we do that? So we've reviewed it both with the phone company and with our staff as like a worst case, here's what we'll want to do.
And how did everyone adapt to that?
They were fine. I was a little worried because some of our staff does not have company issued cell phones, so it would be their personal phones, which is always a line I try not to cross with them. But they were like, yeah, that makes sense. I'm at home with my cell phone. So our staff is sort of amazing and adaptable themselves, which makes things really easy for us when we have to change these things, because they're willing to try whatever it takes.
Cool. Well, it seems like we've really got this under control. And do you have any suggestions for companies that wanted to put this together?
Yeah, I would say start really simple. think about your location, who in the building there is, you know, in charge of that physical space. Make sure you have their info handy. We actually keep our emergency contingency plan digitally, but as it is in the event the internet goes down, I also have a paper copy at home, as does one of our other leaders here. So once you kind of get it written down and think about, if nobody can get here, if one person can get here, what are the different scenarios? Really then think about like making sure that you have access to that if you can't get to your physical location, or if you can't get online, because you may still need a contact at the building. You may still need to be able to alert all your staff to changes at the building. So you're going to want to be able to have a communication network up and running before things have gone really awry. This is a proactive step. I think it's a really simple one. I think it's a really easy one. And I think it's a really adaptable one. Like, you can just keep changing it. You can just keep updating it. You can be excited about those changes and improvements, and get your staff on board, because frankly, they need to know what it is.
They also know what's going on when the world shuts down for months at a time.
Yeah, they need to know how we can flex and what we will do differently in the event of an emergency.
Awesome. Well, I don't think I have any more questions for you.
Well, it was a pleasure. I'm glad we were able to do this and see each other, even though, you know, we're in the same office, but since COVID, we haven't seen much of each other. So it's been nice to connect.
All right. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Rachel.